to lead these teams across regions, with different threat landscapes, but also different mindsets and different cultures. And what are some of the leadership principles that guide you when you are managing these?
It is a people business, and technology, people don't like to hear that, but it really is. So communication is key no matter where you work in security. It has to communicate, and building bridges with people is crucial. I also think that key today is building bridges into the business unit. So yes, you have to understand technology to talk to the CIO organization. You have to understand security to talk to your own staff, but you also have to understand business now. So the more that you can understand business, so like this conversation I talked about, being able to predict how much ransomware or advise them, understanding what the business is doing is now crucial, and getting out and finding that and being a helper to the business, not just the bad policeman who's going to try to get them in trouble.
Welcome to Discover Dialogues podcast, powered by TechDogs. The world of business and technology is evolving at breakneck speed. AI breakthroughs, digital transformation, and game-changing innovations are reshaping industries every day. On this show, we dive into the trends, ideas, and strategies driving the future. We're sitting down with industry leaders, innovators, and disruptors to bring you fresh insights, bold perspectives, and real conversations that matter. So plug in, tune in, and let's discover what's next.
Today on Discover Dialogues, we are joined by Greg Young, Vice President of Cybersecurity and Corporate Development at Trend Micro, a leader with over 3 decades of experience shaping how organizations defend, detect, and adapt in the face of evolving digital threats. At Trend Micro, he now drives both security strategy and corporate development, helping enterprises strengthen resilience while steering innovation across cloud, network, and emerging tech landscapes. Let's dive in. Welcome to another episode of TechDogs Discover Dialogues. Greg, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show today.
Hey, I'm really honored to be on Tech Dogs. Thanks very much.
So, Greg, you've had quite an incredible career path. From your early days with the Canadian Armed Forces, to the Federal Department of Communications. Then you were at, at Cybersecurity, and then AMS, and then Gartner, and now you are leading, global strategy and corporate development at Trend Micro, and that's quite a transition, if I may say. Right from, say, maybe military precision and discipline to enterprise innovation. So let's start there. I want to understand your journey. You've seen probably cybersecurity from every angle, and that combination is rare. So please let me know more about that.
Yeah, actually, my journey started before the internet. So yeah, back in 1987, the military had these things called computers, and they didn't know how to secure them, and they thought, well, we should have some security on that. So they took military police officers, and I was in the reserves at the time, and they said, we want you to do this full time, and we want you to come help us secure computers. And I'd taken computer science classes, but I thought I was going to be running around the woods more and blowing things up in that. But nope, they sent me to the headquarters, and there was just a few of us there, and we had to try to figure out how to secure these mainframes and new computers that were coming out back in 1988. So it was that's how that started. So there was very little discipline because we didn't know what we were doing, and there was no training, there was no books. So we had to try to find our way. And I think the Morris Worm and a couple of other big events, helped educate us, and we're collaborating with other countries to try to figure it out. So yeah, that's how I got my accidental start and in this field 37 years ago.
And since then, you've obviously worked across multiple sectors, multiple businesses. So obviously defense, then there's public, and there's corporate. How did each perhaps shape your approach to problem solving and cybersecurity by fair and large?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I always thought that trying the different sectors would be interesting. So, military, government, private sector, and the private sector, both, services and product. I wanted to kind of try to do it all. And when you get into one area, you necessarily bump up against another. and you say, "Oh, that's interesting." So that was probably my only career planning. Was I had two rules. One was, try to do things that are new and don't get stale, and number two was try to work with people smarter than you as much as possible. So don't be this. If I ever figured, oh, I feel smart today, and I think I'm the smartest guy in the room, that's bad. So instead, it was go to the people I respected, and I tried to do that. So as I went to some consulting companies, I found the people that I respected the most, and tried to work with them. And then when I was exposed to Gartner, for example, I said, well, these are supposedly the smartest people in the world, and determining where tech is going. So I want to do what they do, and that was just kind of how the journey. That was my only career planning overall.
Um, and was there a point where you realized that this is your calling?
Yeah, I think that came really early on. That I had an interest in technology. My dad was an early innovator. He was a mainframe repairman, uh, working for the government. So I got my love of technology from him. But yeah, I think especially once you fall into cybersecurity, whether it's just going to be like a job, a job, just something you do, or is it going to be a calling? And there's so much to figure out in this field. It was always like a puzzle. So I think that really quickly on, I got the bug um, and said, well, maybe next year we'll solve this. But here all these years later, we still haven't. So
So the way at least I look at it, I think not only has your journey been dynamic, I think a couple of things, right? So first is the adaptability, uh, and then the some sense of structure that you put, around it. I think played immense roles in the way you lead, and I want to kind of take that foundation and then try and see how that can translate to the modern cybersecurity puzzle. I think the way I look at it, the cybersecurity landscape today feels like a moving target than ever before, especially because of AI. Uh, because earlier you had isolated breaches, maybe now you have like AI coordinated campaigns. We keep hearing about them, and I think almost every industry faces threats, but some sectors seem to live in a constant state of siege. Now, from your vantage point, which sectors or industries are the most vulnerable, to the next generation of cyber attacks, and why?
I think that's a really good question, and I want to just circle back to your point about discipline. I think that's a really salient point you brought up. That a lot of what we deal with in cyber is foundational things. So there's a lot of things that have been true and are still true today. And when you look at what's going on, the errors today, almost all bad things that happen today, somebody knew about probably for a year. So yes, there's always a case where there's a net new threat or a 0-day attack, which is something we've never seen before. But almost all the bad things that we see happening around the world right now are things that are not new and have been in place. So understanding the foundations, if you want to be successful in this field, I think are really important, because those foundations and the basics keep coming true. And they help you no matter how technology changes or how the threat changes. If you understand your technology and you have the basics of cybersecurity and the foundations, I think you're going to be in good position. To answer the question about which sectors or which areas are the most vulnerable, I believe right now we're in a phase where it's probably organizations that are small and mid-sized businesses. So from 99 to 500 people, kind of those organizations. And I think that ones that have a lot of technological change right now are going to be the second sort of category. So there's some sectors that are going to be targeted a lot, like for example, right now government, because the state sponsored threats. So other countries are targeting them, so they're going to be vulnerable. But a lot of the waves of things we've seen recently are things like retail, um, healthcare, where there's a lot of disruption and change, and they don't tend to be super. They're introducing new technologies when they probably don't want to. So those are the ones that are getting hit hardest right now, for sure.
But do you think it's because of the data that they hold, or is it because they've become more digitally? independent?
I think the latter, the digitally independent. It used to be the case that the data was the target, but now the bad guys don't really care too much about that. They're more interested in just you are a target and you are vulnerable. No matter what you have, you're useful to them now. So whether it's to be a jumping off point to attack somebody else or to go after your data and ransomware you, there's actually very little reconnaissance that goes on nowadays beyond just are you vulnerable. So it used to be the case that we're not going to target tech dogs because we think they're great guys and we like their stuff, but there's none of that going on now. Whether you're a charity, whether you're a not-for-profit, whether you're a hospital for children, there's no caring. It's very very sort of mindless.
And do you think these threat actors or attackers are now specializing even more because of AI? And how does AI fit into all of this?
Yeah, great question. AI is not going to be some great shift and we're not going to see novel attacks anytime soon. My firm belief is that it's an accelerator of things they're already doing. So it'll make the threat faster, more accurate, better in other languages, take less time, and be more convincing than they already are. But it's going to be doing things they're already doing, like phishing. So AI is great for attackers doing that, and maybe finding vulnerabilities a little faster. But we're not seeing, and I don't expect to see any big shift like that. Now, where AI is exciting is for the defenders. So this is going to be a great help for helping defend ourselves because we can be faster, smarter, and we don't have enough people, so we can make our people, be better, faster, smarter. So and also go all this data that we have and that point I made about somebody knew something or something had been known about or is an older vulnerability, helping us find that and all this in that finding that needle in the haystack, that can help us today, and that we're using AI today to do that. So that's really exciting.
And it's quite fascinating, right? So at one point we're saying that AI has become the hero, but it's also the villain in cybersecurity stories.
Yeah, it's also the target.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at one point it's powering defense, but it's also enabling attackers, like you said, to move faster, quicker, better than what they were at the speed and the scale that they were doing before, right? And now that AI sits inside, the security stacks, how do you think organizations should balance that trust in automation, with the need for human judgment?
Back to that point about foundations, that if you take AI out of it and you say, well, how is this, like, how did we do it when we brought cloud in? How did we do it when we brought, whatever technology in? If you look at AI like that, am I comfortable with what data goes into this application? And then, how's that data being handled? What is it connected to? Where does it reside? So those are the basic questions that, although it sounds very elementary and not that exciting, that's what organizations, and we look at the leaders who are, in securing the largest companies in the world right now. This is the questions they're asking. And yeah, there's always some technological spins you have to look at. So, there's special purpose AI versus the general purpose AI, and the open AIs and that we use. But there's also very specific stuff like in healthcare being used. That's a different security solution, different technological problem. So, and also a different data security problem as well. So that's how I think most of AI is being looked at right now. One challenge, though, is that governments are not looking at cybersecurity as part of AI regulation. So we're on our own right now, and we will be as they wrestle with things more like bias and things like that in AI, which is very important. But for cybersecurity, there's no good regulations coming out.
And if you were to fast forward a few years, do you think a lot of the security operation centers, uh, you know, do you think they're going to be a lot more AI led with human supervision, or they'll be human driven with AI as the co-pilot?
The latter, so humans with AI assistance, and that assistance is going to grow as we get more specialized and trust it more. Like for example, today, in using AI in security operations centers, it is helping do things faster. So hey, Vikram sent me this email. It had a malicious attachment. Who else got that email? I can spend 5 minutes trying to track that myself, or I can just ask my agent to do that, and it will tell me. Now, do I trust it to block or remove those emails, or I can say, and quarantine them? So that would be a really good assistive use of AI that we're doing today. But finding and blocking stuff automatically, we do some of that today. But with AI assistance, then when you make these larger queries, you have to really trust it more, and I think it has to be polished a bit more to be in a unsupervised or automated manner completely. But people should always be in the loop, much like doctors using AI assistants, I think, for a while.
Where do you think people should never leave the loop?
I think on that, some of that blocking, or because then that can be used against you. Today, when, for example, in almost all organizations, when there's a new firewall rule being put in, it's got a human in the loop doing some level of oversight or double checking to make sure that it makes sense. And I think that for AI in the SOC, that that has to be done, because two things. One is that um, it's not going to be the AI that goes to answer to the board of directors when things go wrong. It's going to be the CISO, the CISO is going to be there, not a box saying, "Oh, bad chat agent." It's going to be the CISO, and that leads into a whole other topic we could talk about, which is that communications aspect. But yeah, no, I think for a while it's going to be assistive.
I was having a similar conversation earlier today. I was speaking to Jagdish Mahapatra, who heads cloud security at Google for APJ.
Oh, cool.
We were having a discussion around this, and I wanted to ask him that question, right? So we are now in many ways starting to see the era of agentic AIs coming into picture, and I'm sure in the cybersecurity space as well. You guys at Trend Micro also are exploring, how we could perhaps leverage agentic AIs to be able to, go after threat vectors. Uh, but like you said, and in eventuality when something goes wrong, it's the people are going to answer. And I wanted to ask him that question, but I'm probably going to ask you this. Who do you blame? Do you blame the platform? Do you blame the agent? Do you blame the people? Because it's becoming it's going to get a lot more complicated in terms of pointing fingers after a while.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who you blame, that it's going to be the CISO or the CIO that's going to get blamed for it. Uh, the average time in job for a CISO or a CIO is about 18 to 24 months in the industry. Yeah, yes, they move on to new jobs, but it is a very dangerous job. And a lot of CISOs say, discussions we have is, my first goal is to keep my job. And that sounds very selfish, but then they say, well, I can't secure the organization if I can't keep my job. So their goal is to not get fired by trying to do the best security they can. So it's a very, very challenging job, and it's
We had Asif from Coltrix on the show, and he said people don't even know how difficult the job of a CISO is. The amount of stress, and it's something that he thought, or he strongly feels that people should start talking about. And I think you're just really building on that whole thing where you've kind of said that if the average duration of a CISO or CSO is 18 to 24 months, that means you're working in an environment which constantly demands a lot more of you. But I'm glad you brought it up. I think that's something that we should be keep voicing over. Okay, all right. So obviously, amongst all of this, there is going to be a lot of upskilling and mind shifts uh, that teams will have to make, leaders will have to make, to work effectively alongside AI, especially in real time situations. Uh, what kind of upskilling or mindset shifts do you think?
one is that I think no matter whether it's AI or what sort of technology that we're talking about right now, I think all underlying it is massive amounts of telemetry. That whether it's going to be telemetry that's going to be fed into AI to be used, the big goal right now is visibility. So I think that everything we're talking about that's important right now in security deals with getting more information rather than using this limited information that we have today. So I think that the mind shift towards everything that we do has to be based on more information and being able to consume it. So yeah, AI can help with that, but at the base of it is massive amounts of telemetry, and only then can we really understand and really start to make a change.
And talking about information, and there's one thing in particular that you talked about. This was more to do with regulations, actually. You talked in the context of how cybersecurity at the moment perhaps doesn't have a lot of those. AI has a lot of regulations, or at least organizations, states, everybody, governments are thinking about it. Uh, Now, there's a lot of talk and chatter around, obviously regulations aim to protect, but sometimes they slow down, response times in maybe situations that need a lot more faster and quicker responses. And that's the one part, right? And then, given the fact that there is not a lot of regulation, what is it that the industry and the governments or maybe businesses do to kind of bring it together? So, two parts to the question in terms of regulations and information.
So my comment about limited sort of regulation was about AI specifically, and for that, I think that what we've already seen and what I do is get together with and do two things. One is with peers, but also to join some industry groups and government committees where possible. So I'm on a an AI working group for one government. Um, Specifically because to try to press the government to say, hey, here's our concerns in the technology field. And yes, government, you have yours, but here's the reality. And, we're working with, with Google and AWS and, other sort of leading companies specifically because of that, that we want to try to influence them. And so you can't have a voice. So we have to be vocal about that. The second one is peers. But for general regulations, we almost have too many. And that point about telemetry and lots of information, we've got new technology now that we can make compliance quite easy, because compliance is hard, and that's one of those things that can get you in trouble. But that state or posture of your compliance and knowing that daily or almost by the minute is reality today, and we're doing it today. So that's exciting. As is using that telemetry to be able to communicate to senior management something we call cyber risk quantification, or CRQ, which is being able to say to them, hey, if we're going to get ransomware 3 times this year, we think, approximately, and it's going to cost us about $10 million each time. But to get that, you need a lot of data, a lot of telemetry, and confidence in being able to back up your numbers. We haven't had that before. We haven't had that sort of predictability. But yeah, with this massive amounts of telemetry, we can walk into the boardroom and say, here's why I think this, and here's how what can change. So if you give me $5 million more, I can cut that down to $2 million an incident, save money, and maybe cut the ransomware down to once every 2 years.
So the way I'm looking at it, Greg's, or what I'm understanding of it, it's not just the tools and the regulations and that can win this battle alone. It's the people behind who really make the difference. Uh, Now, that kind of brings me perfectly, to the human side of cybersecurity, and we touched upon it, how difficult a job of a CISO is. But it's also about leadership, across the board. It's about the culture that you're building. It's also about the art of steering, your teams in these high stake environments. So the way I look at it, it's well, cybersecurity today is just not about perhaps protecting systems. It's about protecting trust, and something that you talked at the start of our conversation, right? And that also means that you need to lead these teams across regions, with different threat landscapes, but also different mindsets and different cultures. And what are some of the leadership principles that guide you when you are managing, these global security teams across regions and cultures?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it is a people business. And technology people don't like to hear that, but it really is. So communication is key, no matter where you work in security. It has to communicate, and building bridges with people is crucial. When I had my first job as a CISO in government, it was I had to build bridges very quickly to the technology organization, the CIO organization, because I was embedded in a security organization that was disparate from that. So that if I had any success there, it was because of that, building bridges to find out what they were buying, what they were going to be doing, what the trouble was, who what the applications they were building. So that communication was key. I also think that key today is building bridges into the business unit. So yes, you have to understand technology to talk to the CIO organization. You have to understand security to talk to your own staff, but you also have to understand business now. So the more that you can understand business, so like this conversation I talked about, being able to predict how much ransomware or advise them, understanding what the business is doing is now crucial, and getting out and finding that, and being a helper to the business, not just the bad policeman who's going to, you know, try to get them in trouble.
And do you also think that maybe the cybersecurity leadership today requires a different kind of emotional intelligence than it perhaps was required a decade ago?
Yeah, that's a really great point. That especially you mentioned sort of cross cultural, understanding different generations now as well. Because I think that, when I was the youngest generation, we were quite similar to our parents in many ways. But now, the generational gap and the experiences and the life sort of experience is just so different, and the expectations, especially maybe in cybersecurity, especially that for new folks coming in new, what their expectations are. Yeah, you have to understand those different cultures, languages, ways of operating, um, and have good emotional intelligence, as you mentioned. At Gartner, I dealt with so many companies around the world, whether it be vendors or end users. Deal with thousands of companies every year, and within 5 minutes of walking in, you could tell, is this a good organization or a bad one? Are they troubled, or they have their act together? And then being able to work from there. So yeah, no, definitely those people skills are super important.
Earlier when we started this conversation, you talked about the fact that when you were when you were going across building your career in your professional journey, you made sure that you worked with people who were good. You considered them to be mentors. Uh, do you think that role of mentorship still plays true in the world that we are living in? And how do you think it can help shape, the next wave of leaders in the cybersecurity space?
Yeah, I think if you have any experience at all in excuse me, in technology, like for example, your background and your experience, it's almost incumbent on us to be a mentor where we can. Surprisingly, it's difficult to find people who want to um, get that relationship now. I always sought that. In the military we called them godfathers. That if you had a mentor, that was a fantastic thing. You get a colonel who's going to give you career advice and things like that. That was so valuable, and it helped me. I had a great mentor. I had a great godfather there. But today it's almost like, for especially new folks in the field, it's very transactional. So yeah, we're going to work together. That's fine, and then I'm going to go somewhere else, and we're not going to talk again. Um, but instead, those relationships that you build, those are the ones that I value, and I hope that those are useful in guiding them in their career and their success. And there's nothing more exciting for me than to see somebody I've worked with in the past, be successful. That is just so satisfying. So, but yeah, it's a difficult relationship, and not enough people seek it out right now. I think people who are new to the industry.
No, I mean, obviously, it's the millennials who kind of had a perspective of things, and then obviously the Gen Zs have come and they have a different take on things. Also, maybe perhaps, back in the day, a lot of the knowledge and the information was experience based. Access to information was perhaps a lot more limited, and we relied on, people a lot more, maybe the books as well. uh, I think in the last decade or two, what has happened is information has blown and is blown out of proportion now. And I mean, I have a 6 month old at home, and most of the information, perhaps back in the day, would have been me asking my parents or my grandparents on what should be the right way forward. Now I have some random stranger on Instagram telling me what I'm doing right or what I'm doing wrong. Uh, Maybe that is why uh, the whole awareness levels have gone high, but then it also perhaps builds in a mindset which says that I know and I have this information. I don't need somebody to tell me, or I don't need to be mentored. And honestly, for me as well, I think I've been fortunate enough to have had good mentors, through my career. And even today, I look out for people and conversations whom I can learn for. I will go and seek their advice. Maybe I don't call them mentors in the context of a relationship, but I have these people who I would constantly stay in touch with. Seek advice, try and get perspectives. Maybe they open up your viewpoints to another side that you didn't see, or perhaps open up your mind to avenues that you wouldn't have explored otherwise. Maybe push you out of that comfort zone. So I think that's fantastic to have a mentor in a way. But yeah, no, I mean, the way I look at it, I also feel we have to bring in some sense of empathy, to the people around us, especially the newer generations. And I think that is going to be something that defines the next generation of leaders, not just in the cybersecurity space. I think we are living in a world where empathy is fading away a lot, because everybody, like you said, is becoming transactional. And I much appreciate your perspective on what we've discussed so far. We've obviously talked about systems, we've talked about people, we've talked about processes, but at the end of the day, it is the purpose that we're working together for.
Yeah, that's a great point you brought up too, and I think that the mentoring part is more bi-directional now. That I learn a lot from. It should be a two-way exchange. It shouldn't just be you know older person going to tell the young person how to do it. No, it's definitely changed. I learned so much from junior staff now, so I think it's a different relationship there. But there's also this our industry doesn't have a great history in treating people well. So burnout is a factor that you talked about already, and that's a very important one. But also how we treat how we treat people of different genders, different cultural backgrounds. We have a bad history in that. It's much better now. In fact, that's why when I left Gartner, I looked at all the companies I could work at, and I went to Trend, and this is a company I'd seen and how they treated people, and I thought, well, would my daughter, if I had a daughter, would she work? Would I be okay with her working there, or my wife? So once I found that sort of cultural fit, that was a bigger factor than any sort of financial or anything else. It was all about fit and culture. So yeah, because it's a hard field we're in, and it's not kind to people in the past, and we have to do better about that.
On that specific note, I am going to ensure that I do connect you with, Asif from Qualtrics, because I think, the thoughts that you have with how difficult it can get in this role as a CIS or a CSO, and what we should be doing, all of us together, including, me on the media front. Uh, I think we have to have that conversation sometime together, perhaps, and build that voice out. So we'll definitely connect to you and try and figure out if something that's we can have a conversation about to bring more awareness to this. But fantastic conversation so far. Thank you so much, for all your insights. We're almost towards the end, and when we certainly are moving towards the wrap up, and I want to kind of know a little bit uh, more about you, but now on the personal side, right? Because I don't want to do the analysis that we did, not the tech. I just want to keep it light. So what I would love to do next is a quick rapid fire section with you to get to know the human side of Greg Young. Uh, and just let me know when you're ready. Quick answers, no overthinking.
Got it. Ready to go.
Perfect. Morning routine, coffee, tea, or something else?
Decaf coffee.
Oh, interesting. Favorite way to disconnect after a long work week?
It's always difficult to disconnect. Reading history or spending time with my family.
Early bird or night owl?
More night owl person, but you end up having to be both with time zone changes. So I think I just don't sleep much.
What's your go-to comfort food after a long day?
um, my wife's muffins.
Oh, nice. Um, what's your secret talent that not a lot of people know about?
A couple of them. One is that I was an extra in 2 episodes of a TV series back in the 80s. So I've never stopped talking about that, and everybody gets annoyed because I keep repeating it. But I bake bread, and yeah,
And if you don't mind me asking, which series was that?
Airwolf. It was a yeah, it's a 1980s TV series. It was terrible, but I was an extra in 2 episodes of it.
That's good to hear. I'm trying to Google that for some time. Um, if you could teleport anywhere right now, where would you go?
The beaches of Barbados.
Oh, nice.
I lived there for a couple of years, and it's a magnificent place.
So I'm assuming you're a beach person, not a mountain person, which was one of my questions actually. So
I grew up in the mountains in Vancouver, though, so I love the world is a fantastic place. So I've never been to a city that, frankly, I didn't find something great about.
if your life had a personal theme song, every time you entered a room, it played. What would it be?
Probably, I will survive.
Oh, good one, good one. That's. I mean, I was listening to a remix version of it just a couple of days back, but yeah, that's a fantastic song. All right, so the final one: one local dish you've tried abroad that completely surprised you, and you would want to have again.
Oh, that's difficult because I've been fortunate to be so many places. I would say the hummus in the Middle East was transformative for me.
Absolutely. I don't think, here in India as well, and I'm sure in the US as well, you really don't get that authentic hummus. It's some just version of it, but yeah. I'm assuming you're a Middle Eastern food fan as well, palate wise, or is it more?
All food, yeah. Just again, the benefits, all food. In this, one of the advantages of cybersecurity is the experience and travel part of it. So yeah, it's such a simple dish like hummus. It's so easy to make, but if you made so differently in that timestamp, and you never forget having it.
Right, Greg. So this has been a fascinating conversation. It's been great hearing you. Your journey. Your perspectives on cybersecurity. Obviously your leadership philosophy. Uh, Once again, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. Um, it's also, I think, it's for me personally, it's also one of those conversations that reminds me that cybersecurity, as much as uh, it's about protection, it's also about people, and that's the note that I would want to leave with our audiences. So thank you once again for joining us on Discover Dialogues at Tech Dogs. Really appreciate this. Any parting thoughts?
I really appreciate your conversation, and your insights have been fantastic, and especially about the people part. That's what I remember is, when I think back, I don't remember, you know, uh, uh, you know, uh, a salary year, or, what the technological problem was. It's the people. And then when I think back on my career now, and, the highlights, it's working, it's always the people. And even today, I'm thinking about, when I'm going into the office later today, it's going to be less about the topic and more about who am I going to meet with it, what's going on with them in their lives. So yeah, yeah. So I really appreciate your conversation and how you've focused on some really important areas. So this has been great.
Great, Greg. Thank you so much once again.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.